How long have I got? 30 minutes?
Yes.
Smashing. All right, cheers, Layla. Okay, yeah, it's always weird when you do these things because you sort of like there's that kind of like little interim period before it starts recording, and you're like, please don't say something amazing in that time when I don't have record on. So
you don't have that problem with me at all.
No, do you know what though? I interviewed Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh wow!
Yeah, a couple of years ago, and he was recording his end, and he said this thing to me. He said it was kind of quite dark, the room I was in, and he said you remind me of Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now, and I was like, that's the most amazing thing anyone said to me. Even though he's basically saying I look like a deranged mental.
Come on, no. I understand completely what it would mean if he'd say that to me. So, but did you get that on tape?
No, it didn't. Fuck. I know. So it's one of those things where you sort of say it to people, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, cool."
Yeah, right.
So I'm going to start.
In essence, that's it.
I'm going to start this by saying I don't know whether you even remember this, but I did one of my first foreign trips for Metal Hammer magazine with him in Milan, and it was probably,
that's been a while ago,
like 2005, I think.
Yeah.
But I was so green as a journalist, or as like a European, right? Like I barely travelled. I think I'd done a couple of US trips before that.
Yeah.
And in my head, abroad meant hot.
Okay. So you didn't bring any clothes with you? You were freezing all the way through.
I mean, it was probably in January or something, and I was wearing a t-shirt, right? I didn't have because I'm from up north as well, and we don't prepare, for cold weather. And you were so I remember the first night we went out and we had some beers and stuff, and it was quite a sort of spicy interview. Like I'd come as a fan, but it was a bit sort of, we were both a bit pissed, and it was a bit sort of like jibey. And I remember you kind of making a bit of a joke about me being bald, which went in the piece. Okay. And but you were so nice because I was so cold and feeling so stupid that I didn't have any clothes, that you lent me your jumper, and I wore your jumper for like 3 days or however long.
I think I do actually remember all that.
Yeah, right. So I interviewed you like wearing your clothes, which is a first and a last.
Let's keep it that way.
No, we're not going to have any problems using this format. So listen, I've probably spent like I got the record yesterday.
So you've heard it? The entire survey. Nice.
Yeah, it's really good, man. Like,
thank you.
Tell me when you wrote those songs.
Oh, most of our stuff was during the pandemic. I started working on the album late 2019. I got the first 3 songs together, which were "Runaway from the Sun," "Saturnine Saturnalia," and "Salute the Sanguine." And I released them just on like the streaming platforms. I think it was right on the same very week that all the doors got shut down due to COVID. So it was quite a weird time, and the decision to do that EP and put that stuff out was sort of like, in all fairness, I thought that it's nice for the public to hear the stuff, decide whether they want to listen to it anymore, whether it makes a difference, tickles their fancy, and so forth, and also that the record labels could hear what I'm all about, because what I hate the most is business meetings where you don't have anything to show up. So you're just like bragging, like, yeah, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be a whatever, and that's an attitude us Finns don't like. So I thought that's a good idea to put a few songs out. And then when the EP was out, I wasn't able to really put a band together because nobody was allowed to meet anybody. So I ended up working like the EP for the rest of the album, which is to play all the instruments by myself and have it mixed by a fellow called Tim Palmer, who's worked with him quite a few times, and such a great variety of different artists as well. But everything happened kind of during the pandemic or right before. So those were not songs that I would have had in my back pocket when him disbanded. Right. So they're fairly current in that sense.
Did you ever? I mean, him was such a him were a very iconic band. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about the end of him?
Go for it, go for it. Yeah, yeah. It's all.
Yeah.
I think that this is like a transitional point anyway. It's like a bridge between the future and him. And when we're going to be touring next year, there's going to be at least 50% of the set will be hymn songs, and it's going to be like now how I've planned it. It sounds great when it's like zigzagging between the present and the past.
Oh, amazing.
So it does make sense because the songs are not they're written by the same person, so they do have similar sort of melodic aesthetic and so all that stuff. So it's not that far. It's of the same ilk. So
because I guess what I found interesting is that like when I met you that time,
yeah,
it really felt like you were. I mean, him were they were a big band. I mean, I at that point in my career, I hadn't seen like a fan reaction like there had been at the show I attended in Milan.
I
Like
mean,
it was sort of Beatlesy, right? Like people screaming and throwing themselves on people carriers and stuff. It was wild, and but it felt like with that record that you were sort of poised for like even bigger things, and
I
then
mean,
not long after, like it was Gas, wasn't it, who was sick,
mhm.
and it felt a little bit like the band. It felt like you were kind of on hold, really. Like,
Well, it did kind of fizzle out in a way, and then I think I wasn't able to handle all that as well, all the sort of because I before we met, there was these weird periods that when we started out as a sort of typo negative junior, I'd like to call it. We had a super big pop hit in Germany with the song "Join Me in Death," which was such a weird thing for a metal band all of a sudden to be on the pages of pop magazines and play the top of the pops and all that stuff. So we had this weird. We were always falling between the sort of the metal and the pop things, and nobody really knew what to make of it and make of us. And I think that was endearing, but it was also problematic, and it followed us throughout the years because every time we made a bit more heavy album, then all the pop people were like, and the major labels were like, "What the hell are you doing? Are you idiots?" Because obviously they want you to continue doing what is successful. But as a rock band, we needed to test our sort of ourselves and put ourselves to a challenge and up for a challenge and let sort of different idols of ours to speak through the music, like the album Venus Doom, for example, which is one of my favorites. I thought that it's a special album, but it's I do completely understand that it was a boggle in the mind of the label people at that time. So I think we weren't wise when it comes to like being commercially. We didn't have any commercial sense, and that's sort of like that caught up with us. But
well, I mean, it's also that there was. I mean, having worked at Kerrang, like you were, and sort of delving into the picture archives over the years, like I mean, the photographers were fond of taking your photo, right? Like you almost kind of had that like heartthrob status, right? Which again sort of jars a bit with sort of like the metal thing, but at the same time, it was definitely a big part of your popularity.
well, visuals are always important, and then but uh, thank my mom and my pop for the genes, so to speak. So I'm glad if for whatever reason people found me nice to look at, and that's it. You know, of course I was playing to it too. And nobody minds. It's nice. The compliments are nice, but then again, that is a very separate entity from music.
Yeah.
Of course they work together in the sort of commercial sense and all that, but it doesn't really inform how the next riff is going to sound. So
I was actually I was actually talking to a friend of mine the other day. I was saying that I was going to do this interview, and he was saying that you were the first person he ever saw with a sleeve tattoo, and now they're so commonplace. Like footballers have them, right? Like
mhm.
that's kind of wild, right? Like you sort of blazed the trail.
Well, I thought it was Tommy Lee, but I'm not quite sure to be honest.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it was I was lost myself in that whole during those 4 or 5 years or whatever, lost in so many new experiences. I didn't really think for it. I think about it. I just winked, you know, just went for it for those years, and it's miraculous. I survived and came through came out unscathed, more or less.
Yeah,
You know.
no, totally. But do you feel like that time was, that time where it felt like you were going to go to another level, and then there was like sickness in the band, and it's sort of on hold, and maybe kind of lost some momentum. Do you kind of feel cheated by that?
Definitely not. No, no. But I feel humble about the possibility of doing this in the first place, being able to, get the bread on the table, so to speak, by doing this for the past, 26 years plus or so. And I think it's pretty amazing. The competition is tough, and coming from that weird little country and being a big cookie in other ways as well. It did help, but it did hinder as well. So no, no, no. Of course, I still want to be the first person to, play a concert on the moon for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Because we all want to succeed and we want to be good at it. But then again, and one has to be realistic, especially in the realm of music and realm of rock and roll, that it is like winning a lottery. And I didn't get the main prize yet, but that doesn't keep me from playing it.
Has anyone told you that you're irritatingly nice?
No, no, I don't think so.
I mean, what's the worst thing you've ever done? Tell me that you're not just nice. Have you ever killed a puppy or?
No, no, no. I'm not psychopathic like that. I can be a right bastard when it comes to that. I'm very, very particular about music, and I'm very sort of like protective about. I was really protective about the band, and sort of very like a racehorse, thinking about just one thing and not really understanding the needs of other people. I could be very that. It's not so much about everything, rotating me and my ego, but maybe around my ego, but perhaps the band. And I found that was such an important and a fragile thing to hold as well, that it had the utmost importance. I thought that if something should happen to the band, it's a personal thing, and which it was a lot of times. So I'm a person that takes stuff way too seriously, way too easy. But I'm learning bit by bit.
I mean, I do feel like, I feel like
in recent, and I'm not as nice as Dave Grohl.
Well, you see, you say this, right? I've got to be kind of careful. I've interviewed Dave Grohl, and I thought, he was amazing. Like, I asked him a load of questions about Nirvana, which he blatantly could have been irritated by why there was this journalist sat in front of him asking questions about Nirvana when he had a new Foo Fighters record to promote. But I think he realised that I was like the biggest Nirvana fan in the world, and this was like a one-off for me. So that is very nice. But I also did see him. He once threw a frozen can of lager at a journalist friend of mine, which is not the sort of thing that you hear from Dave Grohl.
Oh, that's quite weird. Maybe, I hope that that's the exception that proves the rule. I'm not sure what the incident was all about, but.
Exactly. You've only heard one side of the story. Maybe it was justified. I can't really remember. It was a long time ago.
Yeah,
With you, like I say, I think the record's really good. But I think you've always written good songs, and I think you've always written good melodic rock songs that have that sort of darker edge. And I think the record will do really well. But you would think that at some point, just because of the way the industry's set up and festivals are always looking for headliners and absence makes the heart grow fonder, that at some point someone, it might be 10 years, that someone would say, here's a load of money, can him reform for this festival? Like, how do you feel about
that? Never say never, I'd say. I think, him was it was so much more than just a band or a job or that sort of stuff for me, because I met Miguel, the bass player, when I was around 12. I met Linda, the guitar player, when I was maybe 13 or 14. So we grew up together and went through so many different phases in our lives anyway together, with him being the sort of providing the soundtrack for it and the sort of focus, or being the focal point, that is so much more than about just monetary things. If there would be a good reason, good sort of idea or good cause, or if all of a sudden everybody would start to gravitate towards each other, because I think that would be the best thing. All of a sudden everybody in their own, lives just starting to, whether it would make sense after all this time, because you need to take breaks, and it was a bit of, wasn't necessarily fizzling out, but we had definitely lost the spark in regarding creating new music. It just we tried to work it out, but it didn't sound good. It started to start to feel like a day job. And when it starts to feel like that, then it's definitely time to end it in the world of rock and roll, I think. But or in our world of rock and roll. So I can't tell you whether we're going to feel like that in the future. I wouldn't mind, but it's also I don't want to do it right now. It's not something I would think about constantly or ever, to be honest with you.
When you were in him, I mean, like, did you ever have people suggesting that you might go solo, or did you ever have those aspirations during that time?
Well, it was a weird existence because I did write most of the songs, and a lot of people, when we started out, they thought it was a solo project, also because it was called Him. It was like a weird combo. So all those 25 years, I had to fight for the guys to get some recognition, to say that it is, I do write the songs, I sing the songs, but we are, childhood mates, and that the sound and the way they play their instruments it makes a big difference. It cannot be just whomever. So and I'm actually glad not to talk about that at all. I don't have to, because I played all the stuff by myself, and I'm the one to carry the blame for the good and the bad and the ugly. But yeah, it's I was told that many a time, and especially when you get when something happens to be successful. I mentioned Join Me in Death being a sort of pop hit in Germany and all that stuff, and you can't imagine the amount of cooks that wanted to be in that kitchen at that time, and everybody had something to say and dollar signs in their eyes. But that's not a world I feel comfortable in, and I usually, music is still my safe place. So whenever in doubt, I start listening to Black Sabbath. That's what I do, and that's where it all started, and that's how it happens, because I don't wake up in the morning and say to myself, now I'm going to write a song. It's working on music, or however you want to put it, being creative. It's my way of understanding the reality around me, and my way of it's my survival kit. It helps me out with the yeah, and it helps me out to understand the world and sort of cope with the pressures and the struggles that we all go through. But that's been my method, and it's funny that it's sort of a hobby that turned, or a passion that turned into a hobby that turned into work, and it's all those things in one neat little box. It's it's terribly hard at times, but then again, I wouldn't change it for the world.
I'm just going to say it again, irritatingly nice.
I'm sorry.
You were saying about these songs on the solo record came during the pandemic, and you're also talking about kind of, like almost music or songwriting or creativity being your survival kit. Like, the pandemic sucked. Like, how did you find it, and at what point during that experience or that time in history did you think, well, did the first song come to you?
I think the whole process was more about baby steps, because first of all, after Him, I didn't know how I'd feel. I thought that I'd feel like I lost a limb or something. I physically feel that I lost a part of myself, because the band was such an important part of my life. But the one thing that I felt most the day after Him was disbanded was a great sense of relief. But also, since the slate was kind of clean, I had no idea regarding any of the music and that I might be coming up with. And at least I can't really force it to happen. So you have to experience a certain amount of stuff to get filtered in the subconscious somehow, and then burst out via melodies and riffs. And I've never been able to force it. So I let it sort of marinate for a wee bit, and then sort of like a bit like a scaredy cat, just taking the guitar in my arms for the first time after quite a while. And it started working. Yes, it started working, but it's also a matter, there's so many things going on. Yes, the pandemic, but also the fact that each and every song always for me is not necessarily a swan song, but it's like I saw the existential problematics for myself of how would I put it? Music gives me a reason to be here. that's my excuse to breathe, so to speak. So each and every song is very important in that sense. And I'm always doubting myself, and I think that's healthy too. But I'm thinking that whether I have a song in me, whether I have a future, whether it makes any difference, what's sort of I think stuff that everybody goes through more or less. Then mix that up with pandemic and the uncertainty about future. It really, I really went back to, not consciously, but went back to those sort of like teenage feelings of being an outsider and not belonging. So I felt that the world as it is not a place I feel comfortable. But no, well, I guess nobody did feel comfortable with the, you know, what was going on and how the world is these days. But especially when everything was shut down, it's just, yeah, I honestly felt for the first time in a very long time that I didn't belong, like spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And like this sort of derealization or whatever you call depersonalization, being literally somewhere away from myself and from the world. And I guess through music, once again, I was able to comfort myself enough to sort of not necessarily believe in the future, but believe in today enough to sort of like make it work somehow. That's a weird way of describing all that stuff, but it is like that sort of survivalism. People are funny, like even though there's a great catastrophes, people still want to procreate and build families.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing of the human species, I guess. And I always struggle with that same sort of that existentialist sort of like, do I have the right to party sort of thing? And I do that through music, and I still do, and sort of more or less each and every day. So it's a combination of so many very different sorts of feelings and different reasons that it's hard for me to separate what's going on in the world, what's going on in my head, and what's going on with the guitar.
The existential thing, is that a bit of a Scandinavian thing?
It could be that it's about the fact that we're rather, well, morose might be a bit too heavy, but we're quite melancholy and not pessimistic, but maybe it's long winters and there's sort of like forever darkness that does get to us, and we get to be a bit sort of, we're a breed of manic depressives. The summer, the sun doesn't go down at all, so I guess that the sort of a little bit of mania hits us, and then we would like to go into hibernation and just dig a hole somewhere during the winter, but unfortunately in these days we don't have the liberty of doing so. So it's tough for me to say because I'm stuck in that world. I can't see the forest for the trees. I'm too thin for that.
Yeah, no, totally. So when do you take these songs out?
Started rehearsing with a band I put together back in Helsinki, and started working on the new stuff and the old stuff. And since the album's coming out on the 13th of January, it's a Friday as well, which is quite cool. We're playing on that very day. We're playing Helsinki, a club in Helsinki called Tavastia, which is not the Dingmalls of Helsinki, but let's say the Astoria, back in the day, a kind of important classic place. And we're playing a few gigs there, and then over the next few weeks, we'll fly over to Europe and then head over to Blighty. And afterwards, actually going to North America as well. So it's going to be a busy year. We're playing Download here in the UK.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to continue touring in the autumn as well, and right until the very end of the year, if everything goes well. So I'm hoping to visit like Australia again. I'm just, my fingers are crossed and thumbs are up and all that sort of yada yada.
I mean, it sounds like you're bang up for it.
I mean, yeah, it's, why would I want to sort of half-ass it? It doesn't make any sense, to me at least. But sort of like, I think it's once again like recording the album and working on the songs. I think it's a challenge I put myself to. It's just I need to show myself I can do this, and also thinking in terms of that swan song mentality. To think in terms they might be the last one. I never know if I have it in me, and it's not just about me. It's about how people react to the music and if there is a future, because I can't decide. Of course, I'm hoping there is one, but so yeah. So it is very dramatic, but that's what I'm known for.
No, totally. Don't never change. I'm definitely going to come and see you play So do me a favour and just pack an extra jumper just in case.
I will definitely. Actually, I was thinking that maybe it's your turn this time around.
Yeah,
It is February, so
yeah. No,
keep that one in mind.
I'll think about kind of what colour scheme would work. I mean, it's going to be black, right?
Well, there's so many different shades of black, though. Yeah.
I sort of feel like there maybe needs to just be a little kind of Diamante finish,
Yeah, don't forget the neon.
just a little bit of glam. Yeah, totally. Listen, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to me, man.
Thank you once again, and don't be afraid to knock on the door at the gig when we have the chance to come on over. It'd be nice to hang.
Honestly, man, irritatingly nice. Irritatingly nice.
I'll work on
it. All right, man. Take care of yourself. See you later. Bye.
Bye.